firewall, where human insight trumps every trick. We're not hacking systems, we're hacking behaviors so you won't click. No complicated code, just tried and true brain science at play. Social engineering for good, the best defense is in your mind today.
Welcome to Phishing for Answers. The opinions expressed here are solely those of the individuals involved and do not reflect the views of their employers. Get ready, because the next live episode of Phishing for Answers is starting right now with your host, Joshua Crumbaugh, the CEO of Fish Firewall.
Psychology is the new firewall, where human insight trumps every trick. We're not hacking systems, we're hacking behavior so you won't click. Tick.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Phishing for Answers. Today, I've actually got two guests joining me, Mark Sinanan and Jiri Fiala. I know I pronounced his name wrong, but that's because I can't pronounce it correctly. We were trying ahead of time. Jiri, could you go ahead and introduce yourself first?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. My name is Jiri Fiala, and I'm the founder of Privid Inc. And what we do is we do cybersecurity with using zero-knowledge protocol and fully homomorphic encryption. Basically, the whole reason we started the company is because we realized personal information online needed a better, stronger security system. That's why we did it.
I like it. And Mark? Well, Mark is having some connection issues. I have a feeling we have 2.5 guests joining the program today. So we'll just move on, and when Mark gets back, we'll have him introduce himself. So yeah, it's all about this podcast is all about the human element in cybersecurity. Do you have any maybe stories about human error, or throughout your career, maybe that helped inspire you to start Privid?
God, where do I begin? There was a number of them, not the least of which was mine. I think it's going back almost 10 years now. Got phished. Plain and simple. Got phished. Got clicked on an email, and my entire system just crashed. And that's when I realized that that's when I had the inkling more than anything else that cybersecurity was not what it claimed to be. And yeah, phishing is a different type of thing because phishing is more about social engineering than it is anything else. But at the end of the day, the back end technology should have ostensibly, that was there to protect my system, should have kicked in at some point, but it didn't. And that's when I was a recruiter at the time in the IT space, and that's when I kind of started looking around at why these things kind of happened and why these things fell apart and why people got, well, for lack of a better term, fished into it. And that's when, among other things that were going on at the time, in 2017, I really just left recruiting altogether and went into cybersecurity by starting Privid. It was more of a hobby at that point because I was still trying to work out the code and that sort of thing. We didn't formally start until 2018, 2019. But yeah, it's been a journey. And like I said, for me, it was more a case of something's got to be better than what's going on out there now.
Yeah,
So
agreed, and I understand the journey. For me, it was a little bit different. I had tailgated in off of the exact same person 4 years in a row, and it just was almost a breaking point for me where I asked, what is the goal? What is the point of me doing these penetration tests if there's no improvement year after year? We issue the exact same report. Even down to the same person being able to tailgate because that person who was listed in the report never even found out about their mistake. And it just made me really it highlighted how big of a problem we had around the human element and how everyone had technologies in place supposedly to deal with this, but regardless, that wasn't really being dealt with. And so I understand the passion, and I like how different people look at different sides of the problem and come up with different solutions. It looks like Mark's back. Hey, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself?
Mark Sinanan. Been working with Jiri for about 4 years now, I think. It's been so long, and some days are more hectic than others. So a little bit about me. I've been
because I'm an asshole.
software arena for about oh my god, almost 3 decades now, and been doing a lot of work with Jiri and trying to help with these cybersecurity issues that we've been encountering over the decades, and trying to find solutions, better solutions for people.
Awesome. So, how do you actually get into cybersecurity, Mark?
Well, I actually fell into it. Yuri reached out to me one day, and we started having conversations, and here I am today. But prior to that, I really had to work with different organizations, and we had to teach a lot of security awareness to the staff. And it's a regular process because a lot of people forget what they need to do and what sort of protocols they need to follow when it comes to securing your information. Something as simple as, hey, don't write your password on a Post-it note and leave it on your monitor so you can remember it tomorrow.
Oh, come on. They don't put it on their monitor. They put it under the keyboard.
Okay, yeah, that as well.
Okay. Continue. Jokes aside.
No, you're absolutely right. We've actually seen notes under the keyboard. We've seen notes sticking to the side of the desk,
Yep.
on the inside door of their credenzas.
We actually
been
found a bank vault combination on a sticky note that was actually on a keyboard. It wasn't even under, or not on the keyboard, on the monitor itself, not even under the keyboard. That one just our minds were blown. So
Nothing surprises me anymore with when we're dealing with people, and I've always said it: the most or the hardest part of any project is the people, because they will introduce complexities that are not necessarily required.
yes, yes. Have you ever seen the meme? It's talking about how a developer makes a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it's got the bread stacked like vertically instead of horizontally, and the peanut butter and jelly right in between the. You'd have to see it, but I understand, and I think it's because when people don't understand, most people, if they understand the security risks, they're going to do everything they can to avoid them. But I really do feel like there's a false sense of security with most people in most organizations. And there was a study done from a school out of South Florida, a university, and they found that there's this percentage of every workforce that will actually forward suspicious emails that they get on their personal email address. They will forward it to their work computer, and they will open it there because they think that it's so secure that there's no way they could possibly get hacked. I don't know, Jerry, what do you think about that?
I mean, I'm not surprised because, see, in people's minds, they think to themselves, well, if I forward it to my work computer has a cybersecurity team that is looking after these kinds of things. So odds are they'll catch it, right? But
True.
that's not
We
the
may
case.
also look into all of your personal history in the course of an investigation too.
Exactly. And, but the problem with a lot of this technology is, well, technology with with people and technology, more to the point, is that the more we use technology, the lazier we become. In terms of, in not in one sense, we use technology for a means, as a means to an end, but a lot of the things that we do more than anything else by rote. So
Yeah.
what happens is that as it's, I can't remember the name of the guy, but he called it System One thinking. Effectively, what happens is that it bypasses your actual thinking processes, and you're just working on your muscle memory to a certain extent, where this is what you do, this is how you do it, you open up these emails, you do this, you do that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the reality is that we, as a result of that, don't necessarily critically approach emails and other things in the way we should. And so what happens is that our critical thinking gets bypassed through, because of the System One methodology that we default to, which is, this is the way I always done it, this is the way I've always done it, so this is the way I'm going to do it. And we do it with, when we're driving too. We find,
Yeah.
we do the same thing when we're driving. It's System One thinking. We go a certain route all the time to and from work, and we take the same way to go shopping, we take the same way to do this, we take the same way to do that. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because our brain is designed to do things like that. The problem is that the cyber criminal has figured out how to use that to their advantage, not to your advantage.
We all have cognitive biases that
Exactly.
we are susceptible to.
Yeah.
When I was an ethical hacker, so I spent my career breaking in and doing a lot of red team assessments. And so one of the things that I learned early on was that if I wanted you to run my malware, I was more likely to be successful at getting you to do it if I made it difficult. And it seems counterintuitive, but the harder I made it on you to run my malware, the more likely you were to ignore red flags. So if
Yep.
your antivirus pops off, but you've had 10 steps to get to this point, you're very likely going to ignore that antivirus at this point. And it's a cognitive bias called sunken cost fallacy.
Yep.
So the more time we have invested, the more we're going to ignore anything around it. And so um, I love actually the driving example that you gave too. And in that driving example, take the time when you're on your commute to work and it's, you're in the zone or really barely paying attention. One of those times where you barely remember driving because you're just thinking the whole time. And all of a sudden, you have a close call, a near miss, you almost wreck. And what happens? You have this heightened sense of awareness. You're paying attention. It was a good reminder. The next day, when you're merging or getting off and you're in that area that's a little bit more dangerous, are you more careful? Yes, you are. And I see that as being the number one reason that we run phishing simulations, so that we can catch that near miss, so that it's not the bad guys, it's us, and provide that immediate just-in-time follow-up. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, it's absolutely valid in terms of that, because see, what it does, again, we go back to the System One default that I was talking about, right? You call it your version, but the System One is what the psychologists refer to it as. It kicks you out of that into the System Two thinking, which is where the critical thought processes come
Yeah.
in, your analytical processes come in, you're actually working your brain again.
What was that,
It's,
the book Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow?
no, it's the name of the Kahneman, I think, is the name of the professor.
I
Kahneman,
think it's the same guy.
K-A-H.
It might be the same guy because that name sounds really familiar.
Yeah, I can't remember what the book was, but I just
Hmm.
I've come across it so many times, the System One, System Two thinking, that I just completely forgot where I got it from, because I'm one of these people that's a voracious reader, and so
Same. At a
I'm
certain point, it's hard to remember what book or what article that you
exactly.
got that information from.
Yeah, I remember the information. I just don't remember exactly what specific point
So
of origin I got it at. But the
so
bottom line is, for me, this is one of the inherent things that when I was looking at how do we make Privet a valid choice for people, is how can we incorporate that inherent biases where you give people too much of a overload when it comes to security, and they're going to stop using it,
yeah,
right?
security is often thought of as a roadblock, an obstacle, not an enabler. And I know that's one of the things that a lot of people talk about on this show is how they want security, their security teams anyway, to be more of enablers, business enablers, not a roadblock, not an
Mhm.
obstacle.
Yeah, and that's
I'll jump in there on
go
that
ahead, Mark.
one.
Yeah.
So, well, Yuri made a good point. We find that the majority of people today, or not just today, but throughout the course of my lifespan, they only learn their lessons after the incident has occurred. You can warn them multiple times. Don't do that. Don't do it. And they still do it eventually, right? And then that's only then do they learn their lesson.
So I think that's the reason that we
I
have to run phishing simulations because they can learn
yes,
that lesson through hands-on. Hey, you did it, you fell for it, but it's not really the bad guys. We have nothing to clean up. It was a safe environment.
yes. But now you actually have the cybersecurity guys sort of making things more difficult. I'm going to go for one of the big five banks here in Canada. They're making steps more difficult for people, internal staff, to do development, to do testing on live data. So typically, what we would do when we were in the software development cycle, we would take a copy of production, put it into development. Now, cybersecurity does not want that. They don't want to see you doing that. They said, oh, well, it's a risk of information getting out. So you have the option now. You either run a third-party encryption software that limits the amount of data, or you can actually just look through the database and you can actually scrub data to a certain extent and avoid people from viewing it. But what happens when you have to do effective development and you want to test your results? So there's it's a double-edged sword at times, especially in the bigger
Well, I
organizations.
will say that just secure development, CI/CD in general, does often put a lot of policy around it. I know, at least in my organization, we try to be very agile, but we have absolutely had to put I guess guardrails around the developers, what they can and cannot do. And I'll give you an example. I got a literal request. We're a cybersecurity company, but I got an actual request that made it all the way to my desk because people had said nope, 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 and our security architect absolutely rejected it. But they just, they were so adamant that it filters its way up to me. And the request is to open up an SQL port to the internet. So obviously, I'm like, hell no, I'm not approving this. This never
Mhm.
even should have made it to me. But I think that it's a really good example that the developers are at their core, their job is to get the job done, and they always have unrealistic deadlines. They have more to do than they have enough time to do. But the security just has to be wrapped around it. And I think that's an area that everyone struggles a little bit. You don't want to slow them down. You don't want to make it so difficult that they can't do their job. But there's a lot of security that has to be wrapped around development because I'll tell you, developers, time and time again, I've got quite literally now hundreds of thousands of users. Developers are some of my less secure users, and it's not because they don't care; it's because that's not their priority. They're moving too quickly off. And
Mhm.
honestly, that's how you fish a developer. Anything that'll save them time, and they'll click all day long.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. And it's again, it comes down to one simple thing: mental fatigue,
So
right? So when somebody is working on something and they're so hyper focused on whatever that thing is, whether it's a developer working on code or whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever that thing is, your brain becomes focused, but because of the way our brains work, it's focusing on that, everything else to the side. So from a mental fatigue perspective, it's not prepared to handle extraneous input.
I have a theory on that that goes back to what Yuri was talking about with the System 1 and System 2, or fast brain, slow brain, whatever you want to call it. So our subconscious, that System 2, that, or I guess System 1, whatever, our subconscious, is it's our body's natural defense mechanism. Something flies at your face, your eyeballs or eyelids automatically shut. Your arms automatically come up to block it. And it doesn't really matter how fatigued we are. Our subconscious is really good at blocking things. And so I believe that when we have that near miss, so we run a phishing simulation, the user clicks, they get to a page that has immediate just-in-time training that says, hey, listen, you fell for urgency bias. You fell for the authority bias. That helps them to better understand their way of thinking and, more importantly, identify those red flags. I believe that we can create a form of human virus definition, because when they see that, when they've been through it now, they're not going to fall for that again. And the next time that they see that authority or the urgency being used against them, at a subconscious level, they should immediately have red flags go up and move on. And when it happens at a subconscious level, people don't even think about it. Often they don't even realize that they've gone and done it because it's happening on autopilot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very
and they're
much
less
so.
likely to get tempted, too.
Well, yeah, it's true, but here's the fly in the ointment, so to speak. AI and deepfakes.
Well, I think AI and deepfakes are the call for this, the call to action, if anything, because how on earth are we ever going to defeat them with technology? I don't see it ever working. I know there's companies out there, we can detect deepfakes. Sure, today, but what about 6 months from now?
Yeah.
So I really believe that it's people, process, and procedure that are how we defeat deepfakes. And on the people side of it, we've got to train them to trust their gut. And that means we've got to be giving them the skills so that they have faith in their gut. And we've got to be forcing them to exercise it on a regular basis. And I think that's why we run phishing simulations as part of our training program. And I don't think we talk about the why enough. It's just accepted that we do phishing simulations, but why are we doing it and what's the goal behind it?
Well, I mean, I agree with you that, running these simulations over and over again, it's one of those things where I've been a martial artist my entire life. And, one of those things that you do over and over and over again as you're going through the belts is you train and you repeat the process, you repeat all of the patterns, all of the different movements and so forth until you can do them literally without thinking about it. And the simple fact of the matter is it boring? Absolutely. It's absolutely boring. But does it save your ass when you're in a tournament and you're up against somebody else and they do something that you've never seen before, and all of a sudden your body just responds and you think to yourself, oh my God, I just blocked that? How? So,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's also easier than blocking with your face. But
I'll tend to disagree.
Well, I mean, the easiest might be blocking with your face. You can just only do it a few times before you're out.
Anybody can block with their face. That's the easy part. But as I learned a long time ago. But the thing is that, as you said, it's that training and training and training, so that the training almost becomes a default rote mechanism or system one mechanism to bypass that phishing option, right?
Yeah.
And is it something that's going to happen overnight? No. It's something that has to be done on a constant basis and constantly reestablished
Well,
more
and
than
I
anything
think it
else.
starts with good habits. And
Yeah.
well, I guess it really starts with good culture that leads to us teaching people good habits.
Mhm.
If my people treat their email, looking at the sender, paying attention to if it makes sense, is the external sender notification there? If a few of those things are the same as looking both ways before they cross the street, we're not going to have issues. But it has to become that habit, and that you're right, that doesn't happen overnight. It takes, I mean, at minimal to see any real culture change, 1 year. And that's quick. And you're not really, I mean, you're just gonna be barely beginning to start seeing the results. So culture change is a long-term commitment, and it starts with the highest leaders of the organization. I think that's one of the other issues is too often it's led by the CISO, and that's great. But it's better when it's led by the CISO.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. I mean, it's I see here's one example that kind of brings that home. I see people I where I live, there's an 8-lane road um, from my place to where I go shopping. It's 700 meters, so I walk it. It's really easy. But I see people, as you said, look both ways before they cross. They see the cars. What they do is they misjudge how far away those vehicles are, and then they run like idiots across all the lanes of traffic, almost getting hit.
Well, it's
Right.
the old
So,
video game.
so
Frogger.
it, it's so it's one of those things
Well,
where
you're not supposed to play that in real life. You don't get 3 lives.
well,
You only get 1.
you're
Ah,
not supposed to
Darwinism.
play that. But I mean, they looked both ways. They saw the danger, and they did it anyway. So you've got to get people to kind of think a little more critically around that
Think about the
danger,
risks, yeah.
right? Because yeah, just looking both ways is step one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not running across 8 lanes of traffic is definitely step two.
Well, and while there are still people that'll run across after looking both ways, that I think traffic's an extreme example, but there's a ton of people that don't take the threat seriously when
Yeah.
they're buying a new security system for their home that they're installing. When they're putting a new baby monitor in their home that they can watch from anywhere in the world. Well, how, does that, is that exposed to the internet? Do you know what kind of risk do you have? Have you opened up to your
Mhm.
home? And I think those are the types of things that people are not thinking about enough. And we've got to get them thinking about it. And I think when the consumer starts thinking about it, they force the vendors to be more responsible as well. Although I will say in recent years, the whole Internet of Things explosion has gotten far more secure, at least with the major vendors. But when it first came out, nothing had any security. These
Hmm.
security systems, still to this day, there's a website that'll take you to open cameras exposed to the internet, millions around the world, and you
Mhm.
can just go there and watch people in their homes, at their offices, whatever. I mean, it's weird, it's creepy, but there's an entire website devoted to this.
Yeah.
Um, I saw, I was on this CBC episode where I think is the name of the show. But anyway, they were investigating this, and they actually went to this person's home, and they pull it up on their iPad, and they're showing them, look, look, you can see your, we can watch us talking to you right now, and they had no idea. They showed him the website, and these people were just oblivious to it. And they're like, well, we
Mhm.
installed it for security. Well, the bad guys could also be using it to monitor you and know when you're gone. And so there was just this whole aspect of it, but I really found it, I don't know, interesting how little awareness there is around that. Okay,
Well,
so go ahead. Yeah.
well,
No,
we
no,
have
no.
this
I was just
one guy. Yeah, we have
go
this
ahead.
one guy. Sorry, Yuri. So we
No,
have this one guy who's done a reverse attack on a lot of these hackers that were based out of India. It's pretty funny how he actually got a hold of their camera system and started playing with them. So, I mean, it's great to see that we're seeing some improvements in this sort of architecture and putting better protocols in place to avoid this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and these people are very well organized. I actually had a request. Well, ironically, it was from CBC to go in and hack back one of these groups, and I'm like, "Well, are you going to provide the legal coverage if I get in any trouble?" They said no, so I said I'm not going to do that. But then this guy goes famous on YouTube for doing exactly that, so I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe I should have. So, well, very cool. Let's switch gears a little bit. Artificial intelligence. It's exciting. We'll just start there. Any cool new developments, technologies, things you've heard about that you want to talk about?
We can go through robotics and the major advancements they did, especially on the silicone coatings that they've done for a lot of the exoskeletons or the skeletons.
Well,
For
in the
them.
robotics, we now have the ability to train them like they train Neo in the Matrix.
Well, we can. We'll see. We'll see how it
Well,
goes, right?
there's the new open source model that simulates millions of hours of robotics training, but it does it just completely in a simulation, and so now we don't have to do all of that training manually. And I think that's one of the number one reasons that we've seen such a vast improvement in robotics and the movement and their ability to walk and all of that recently.
Well, yeah, it's true. There have been remarkable achievements when it comes to the robotics section. And I see artificial intelligence as becoming part of that component. I mean, Asimov called it in iRobot, right? And he wrote that book, God, 70 years ago now. And he called it. He called it very, very accurately.
Yeah.
And I think that really the whole amalgamation of artificial intelligence and robotics is going to take things to a whole different level. And then again, we're going back to those systems. How secure are they? And how breachable are they? How hackable are they? And
I
so,
don't know, but I am excited and will ignore security risks just to have a full-time robot servant helping me out around the house.
right,
That's a joke, by the way.
well, but right now, the problem with AI right now is that it's in a very nascent stage, and it's still not at the level that we would like it to be when it comes to what it can and cannot do and that sort of thing, and the interactions that we can and can't have with it. I think that
It has
AI
memory issues. I think that's the biggest issue is lack of
well,
memory.
one of the things that I've realized is that AI, especially when it comes to DeepSeek and chat and so on, what they're good at is information that has been around for a long time. Like information, like say interpreting laws in different countries, different things, interpreting regulations, interpreting like data that has been around for 50, 60, 70, if not more years. And it's good at looking at historical data.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily good at the more recent stuff and creating things. It's good at like when I write articles, I'll have them edit the article, like look through it and edit it for me. Where can I improve this? What can I add, and that sort of thing. But will I get it to write the article for me? No, it can't do that. Well, it can, but it's atrocious. But
Well, I
the
think, yeah, I guess when I do it, I just give it a stream of consciousness, but ultimately I'm writing the article. I just talk to it and then it puts it into words for me, which or formats it for me.
Yeah,
Um,
that's basically what I do. Am more of a write it out type person as opposed to saying it, because then it picks up all these
oh,
things. And
oh, it's atrocious, and sometimes
yeah.
like it'll butcher somebody's name or something.
Yeah.
Or like even my own name. Like the other day I was Jeshua, like it was I think Jeshewa or something like that. I'm like
Mhm.
what?
It's not
So
to the stage where it's mature enough to go through that. But yeah, this
yeah.
is another double-edged sword that's coming into commercial use and general public use now, and it's just going to be a mess.
It
We're going to
will.
get the criminal elements, we're going to get the good elements, and whatever
We already
new
have the
out
criminal
there.
element. I mean, we see it every day. If
Yeah,
I hire a new person in finance, and they don't have to be finance, but finance is the most targeted, and they go and they update their LinkedIn today, they will be targeted by lunch, and they will be targeted by their CEO by lunch. I don't buy that we're not using AI in these tasks. They are taking the person's role and what they do, and even the organizational structure into consideration in the targeting. And that tells me we're already using AI to target people, and it makes sense. It's the perfect fish. I mean, back in the day, the biggest limitation of being able to hack across borders was linguistics. And that's not an issue now because understanding what the most likely password that somebody's picked in Guangzhou, China, is easy as as querying a large language model, and it really has flattened the world. Writing that fish, easy. I mean, the translations are brilliant, and how
Yeah.
I mean, they're better than humans often at doing some of this translation now, and so I think there's areas where it really is just I don't know, almost a wide open field for hackers where they've got this new technology and the people are just as insecure as they used to be, and so now it's that much more convincing, and so it tells me we have to step up our game as companies in teaching our people, and I really believe we've got to encourage our people to take it home. It accomplishes two things. It helps to make children more aware of the risks, and so hopefully they're not going to college and paying $500 for this job that they got offered that they're never going to see,
Mhm.
or whatever it is. But there's a lot of college students getting scammed because they're not aware of the risks, and so it's helping to drive that. But to me, when somebody takes it home and they go and they tell their children, they go and they tell their elderly parents about it, they are becoming the expert themselves, and it repositions them and forces them into a new line of thought. Because when they're home, they're the expert. If their child has a question about security, who are they going to go to?
Well, this is it, right? Because right now, what I feel is, in a weird way, and this has been pointed out many ways, many times, but we're kind of a sandwich generation from like guys that are in our age group, because we've got elderly parents that don't know anything about technology. We've got kids that take technology for granted, and as a result of that, they don't look at the security protocol that is required for these things. And when their systems break, they don't always know how to fix it. And same with the parents. We're the ones that understand that for both groups. And so we're kind of playing this interesting game where trying to help both groups get to the same point, and neither group really sees the point because the younger ones think they know it all already. They
Well,
don't.
they're desensitized to it. Ah, whatever. I've
Exactly.
been on Roblox since I was 4. You know?
Right. And then they see all the other, exactly, and then they see all the kids that are, then they see all the other individuals that are on Instagram, TikTok, the Facebook Reels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And people's lives are out there, and they think to themselves, oh yeah, no problem, I don't need to worry about security, I don't need to worry about this, I don't need to worry about that. And then you've got the older group that says, well, I have nothing to hide because I don't do anything bad.
So said the
Not just
OnlyFans
about nothing to
people.
hide. It's also about your livelihood, your retirement,
It's
your
right.
future, your just not even having to deal with the headache of having your identity stolen. If nothing else, there's just the headache that's there. So there's a
Yeah.
million reasons to worry about it. And I've seen so many people get scammed out of very, very large amounts of money, and often the tactics that the people use to scam these people leave deeper scars and wounds than the loss of the money ever will.
Well, yeah, because it's almost
I mean,
like
there's a few examples of that as well.
true. Yeah.
Can you guys
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
hear you.
hear me? You have two perfect examples. You got two perfect examples of this. I mean, you've got the likes of people who are lonely and they get this text message that says, "Hey, I would love to meet with you."
Yeah.
And then they would text you back 5 minutes later. Oh, I ran short of cash. Can you send me some money to this address?
My
Right? And it ends up
brother-in-law
being somewhere
has
in the middle
sent
of
gift
Africa
cards
in a
like
jungle
50
reserve.
times. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, yeah. Look at the accounts for these OnlyFans folks. They thought there was a private showing where they could make some side money. Ended up exposing a couple of teachers. And they end up losing their jobs, their full-time employment. Right. So yeah, we need to continue teaching and enforcing and repeating, and repetition is key when it comes to educating people.
Yeah, agreed. But I think we got to keep the education simple. We've got to stop overcomplicating it. Our users don't want to hear about the technical. They don't want to see the technical. They don't want to know about the technical. Um,
Absolutely.
so I think it's just think before you click. And we got to put more thought into our advice too. And I love to use the example of hover. One of the most common bits of advice when it comes to phishing is hover. Hover over that link. But in or in environments where people aren't on computers and they're mainly mobile, whether it's, more of a blue collar workforce or more of a mobile workforce, there's a lot of these different workforces. And on a mobile device, that's terrible advice. And so I think the other thing is that our training needs to be dialed into the individual a little bit more than just this generic one size fits all once a year approach where we cover 25 subjects. They're not going to learn. They're not going to hear most of it. And I love the example of the best user. That person that takes notes, they're paying attention, they're hanging on your every word. They hear about all 25 different things. By the time they get home, they've maybe remembered 10 of them. And within a week, you're down to just a few or a handful that they might remember. And this is the person that paid attention. So I think that's part of the issue is that when we do binge training on anything, you just don't get good retention. Even on LinkedIn. Oh, okay. So this is new. Mark, you're here, and we've had connection issues with Yuri.
Yeah, it's we're problematic, the both of us. So you talked about the training. Now, one size definitely does not fit all. It is definitely has to be frequent, not just once a year. At the last major corporation I worked at, we had training that would be surprise. So they would do a clean desk survey, which would be done after hours. Whoever failed, guess what? You're on the list of doing your security awareness training once more.
Do you think that worked?
Yes, it did. However, you'd still find some repeat offenders. And is it because they don't care? Potentially, yes. Are they just going through the motions? Yeah. But apparently, it was also kept on HR's file. So if you met a minimum number, almost like your driver's license, if you accumulated a certain number of points, guess what? You're getting pulled into the principal's office. So you get that sort of approach as well. Now, some of the top concerns for phishing now, especially by the cybersecurity folks, is mobile. And we've seen a lot of that happening now, like you previously mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we are almost completely out of time, although we got to wait so that Yuri can say goodbye. There he is. Um,
There, yeah.
we are almost out of time here, so I would ask both of you, do you have any advice for our audience or our viewers before we wrap up the show today?
Um, so much. But the simple fact of the matter is, just awareness, awareness, awareness. And the funny thing is, sometimes if you come across something that's suspicious or anything, think about the simplest thing to do beyond just opening it up and sending it forward or whatever. But what's the next simplest thing to do if you think something is fishy, if you don't think it looks right? What's the easiest thing to do? The easiest thing to do is ignore it.
Delete
Get
it,
rid of
move
it.
on, ignore it. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Report it.
That's yep.
Ideally, we're
Simplest.
reporting it because I do like that metric. I think that monitoring the report rate is one of our best ways to measure culture. It's hard to measure culture.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, and as you said, you've got to tailor it to the group that you're talking to as well. And usually that means you've got to run, instead of one educational seminar, whatever you think it's, whatever you want to call it, for everyone, you've got to run a number of them for different groups within the organization, because finance is going to have a different metric and protocol for security versus the HR department.
Well, and
And
finance needs to be trained about the common financial fraud attacks.
yeah, exactly. And they especially will need to be trained on AI and deep fakes, because a lot of that is targeted at finance.
Most of that's targeted at them. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And this for us, our core market is government, healthcare, finance, because those are the people that really need our technology. And when we couple it with the anti-phishing technology that is already out there, it's pretty secure. It becomes from 90% secure to 99.999% secure.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference, because then your organization will be protected. Is anything 100%? Absolutely not. But is it as close to 100% when you combine technologies with ours? Absolutely it is.
Yeah.
And that is a shameless plug. But the bottom line is that we love working with organizations like yours and others, because it just elevates both technologies.
Well, and I love hearing other founders' stories where they, sort of focused in on because there's a lot of different founders out there looking at a lot of different sides of this problem, and I honestly think that's where most of the innovation is really coming from, are those people that looking at a very, very niche element of it. So very, very cool. Mark, any final, not final words, like you're gonna die, but any words of wisdom for our audience, but before we end the show here?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Yuri hit the nail on the head there, and I got to really stop using my face to block punches. Then I'll be my final words. The key is really repetition. Yeah, repetition, and you really have to make them aware of it. And like Yuri mentioned, address your audience, know your audience, and know how to address them, and speak to them in that level. Because it glazes over. You can see their eyes glazing over, and it's the one thing you learn from I'm guessing from high school through postgrad, undergrad. Yeah, address the audience. Ensure that you know who you're speaking with. Let them know what's going on. And the one key word I use in business and my personal life is think about the repercussions.
Yeah, I think that that's an incredibly valid and good advice. Repercussions of what we're doing are can be vast, and I've seen all too many times where people cost the company millions, even billions. In one example that I saw, and and I mean maybe they lose their job. Sometimes they don't even know. Sometimes they're not even aware of what they did. And I think that that's an area where, we've got to do more to communicate with the user what risk there is before it becomes a problem, as opposed to, communicating after, oh man, you messed up big time. So, well, hey,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today. And everybody joining us remotely, have a wonderful day. That's another episode. See you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Josh.
Thank you for having us.